Well, thank you very much, Ravi. Can everyone hear me? Can anyone not hear me? Good. Can you put your hand up if you can't hear me? Thank you very much for inviting me here today, Ravi. Actually, I'm listening to everybody in the room, and I already thought that I was the most unqualified person to start speaking, and now I absolutely know I am the most unqualified. As you heard just now, I used to run travel companies, and got very interested when I came into India. I got very interested in working with young people when I came to India. I ran a big company. You walk the streets of Bombay, a city of 25 million people, and you literally, for me as a foreigner, you come into an environment where 12 million people in my city are living on the streets in the slums, and 12 million people live in apartment blocks. And that really, lived a middle-class life, as we all do in this room. And that really started to puzzle me a lot. And now that might sound quite strange to you, but a lot of what we are today at Magic Bus is because perhaps the context of where I've come from and what we've introduced into India has been very different than perhaps a Mumbaikar has as they've grown up with these environments. When I started Magic Bus now 20 years ago, one of the first things I wanted to do was to go and talk to organizations about what the basic problem was with young people. And I don't think it's shifted much in 20 years. And I learned that 98% of all primary school children are within 2 kilometers of a school. So it's not the infrastructure. We have amazing laws in our country. The SSA has done a great job at enrolling young people back into school. So it's not about the quantity of the infrastructure. Then I started looking at what happens at the end of this pipeline of education that you guys are all very much engaged in. And I started talking to non-profits in India, in Bombay, specifically in the education field. I started talking to young people. And what was really interesting to me was that the aspirations, the dreams of young people who live in poverty are probably the same as your children and my children. You talk to children from Doorstep, Akanksha, Pratham, they all feel that they're going to be successful young people in this new India. And that's mainly where my heart drops, because I kind of know, having done this for so long, that we're structuring our education system and getting young people to learn things that might not necessarily help them move out of poverty. And that's what I want to talk about today, because I don't come from an institution. I come from as I said, an education institution. I come from an organization that's focus is to move young people from poverty. And at the end of that, if you can't offer somebody the financial security to move from poverty, then I think we've all failed. What's the point? I talked to an Akanksha child and they say they want to be an astronaut. I talked to a Doorstep child, they say they want to be a pilot, a doctor, a physician. That's wonderful, but is it? 93% of all young people that you or India is going to educate will end up in the disorganized sector. That means highly unregulated employment, a lot of vulnerability, a lot of marginalization. And I say this because it started helping me focus my guns on what are the main gaps in our education system. And today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about education, perhaps in its broadest context. This is not about pedagogic, my colleague Deep said, this cross between cognitive and non-cognitive learning. This isn't about traditional classroom learning. This is about structuring a process, a system, which gets children educated. That's an absolute given. But also enables them to go into environments where they're going to have financial security at the end of that system. And I believe unless you look at that, it's a job half done. We have 400 million people in the next 15 years in India, 400 million people who are going to be under or unemployed. Amazing, huh? No country, however great we are, no country can put up with 400 million pissed off people because they can't get the work they want to get. And we need to think about that now. So before I speak and before I provide the framework of what we want to do, I want to just show you, can I flip to the first slide, please? Second slide then. Oh, sorry, I'm sorry. So I don't want to spend 5 minutes talking about this slide, because this is, I think, the most important slide I'll show today. The rest are fairly standard. But this is a slide about 20 young boys who lived on the streets of Fashion Street in Bombay, who decided, with a little bit of help, that they one day would change their destiny, their lives. These 20 boys were living on Fashion Street, working, as you all know, Fashion Street, working in the either chai stalls, or they're working in the clothes selling the clothes in the shops. And as you heard in the introduction, I used to play a lot of rugby. I have to say, I used to play for India, but in India we only have 7 rugby teams, so it's not such a great accolade. We're not such a great team, but I used to love rugby. And having spoken to 20, 30 non-profits in Bombay about why aren't children engaging in education, why aren't children like these lovely, wonderful, talented, intelligent young men, why aren't they getting connected into the opportunities that other Indians seem to have? And one of the things I really understood well from a very early stage, and there's a lot of people here from, I heard theatre, I heard adventure travel, a lot of my youth was molded not in the classroom, but what happened in school and in the weekends outside the classroom. I loved sport. I was useless at academics, but I loved rugby. My father at the weekend would take me out to the mountains. We'd camp, we'd rock climb. And actually I'd say, look at what I've done in my life. I was running a huge company at 29 years old. I founded a company which is much larger than that now at 33 years old. I would say that these, and I'm not a smart chap from an academic perspective, but I do understand the value of these critical life skills, these critical early learnings that I got as a child that really differentiated, I think, my success from perhaps even my peers and the people I used to work with. So I'd looked at these 20 non-profits who focused just on education. And what I saw is that a lot of these organizations were doing a spectacular job at grade elevation. Those days they weren't using so much technology, but I see today so many organizations are using hybrid technology, teacher training, technology-enhanced classrooms. Fantastic. But what a lot of organizations and schools and non-profits don't look at is this beautiful thing called childhood, and the importance that we must give to allowing a child to play. That is a child's work. They're redundant if they don't have play. So I did one thing. One day the Bombay gym the boys that I used to play with were cribbing and cribbing. Sir, we don't have a rugby team to play with. They were saying, we were cribbing that we didn't have other teams in our city to play with. There's only 3 rugby teams in Bombay. And yet every single Saturday outside Bombay Gymkhana, these young boys would pop their heads over and watch us play rugby. And for me it was an easy step to take to say, well, why don't then I start a rugby team with these young men that dwelled on the streets of Fashion Street. The Bombay Gym agreed, and you can imagine, I would say after 20 years, so we program to 500,000 children today in many, many different countries. The best day of my Magic Bus life was the day those 20 rugby boys, they got called the rugby boys, walked through the Bombay Gymkhana school gates, the gates of the Gymkhana, walked into the changing rooms and played for 1.5 hours with the richest young people in the city. And it's a bit of a cliche thing to do, but sport can give you that opportunity, that level playing field, the cliche of the level playing field, that enables people for that period of time. It didn't matter what social status, what economic status, whether Hindu, they were Muslim, they were playing rugby, and they became a very, very good rugby team. And I just want to say that the 3 things that I learned, again, I come back to I was really not qualified. For me, it was a good fun. I was their coach. I was teaching them. It was just a very simple exercise for me. It was what I would do at the weekends and what I would do at the weekdays. I learned 3 things. 1, after 3 months, I thought, this is easy. They love me. They love magic. They love this concept of playing rugby. I've got them in my hands. And so what I did, I got all 20 jobs. I thought, okay, my network, I can get some jobs in offices, shops. I can help these young boys. They're all 17, 18, 19, 20. Within 3 months, every single boy ran away, got sacked, fired, didn't want to travel 2 stops on a train stop, didn't want to put on a uniform, didn't like the way someone was speaking to them in the office. It was an absolute failure. And I realized that you can't just take young people, and again, I'd say this even in the education system, and assume that they have the right set of skills that is going to see them right on that critical day when they have to go to work. And that started to mold my journey, what we call now the Magic Bus journey, childhood to livelihood. And our mission, in many ways in life, is trying to understand how far back we have to go in a young person's life to mold them in those critical skills that's going to see them right as an adult. Successful, happy young individuals, which we all want to obviously see in young India. So that became known as the journey. The second thing, which I felt was a really powerful thing, is that I didn't want these boys to have this for free. 20 boys, I was giving up every 3 nights a week, I'll be playing rugby with them. And so I'd ask them at the weekends that I would hire a bus, and we're going to drive that bus into Dharavi, Port Trust, local slums around Bombay, and we're going to pick up 50 children, and we're going to take 50 children on an amazing weekend away and give them that sense of childhood, those resilient skills that you and I and everyone in this room had when we were young people, that you so much lean back on. I think we subconsciously, most of the time, lean back on those skills to help us direct some of the decisions we make. So we drove this bus into a slum, and the rugby boys had to be the role models, the heroes of the 50 children on that bus. I took literally a back seat on the bus. I didn't even speak Marathi, so it was not an option. But what I saw was incredible. These young people, these young rugby boys really were the heroes. They connected, they were empathetic. Every young child was looking up to them. So this became the model also of Magic Bus. You know, we employ nearly 2,000 full-time staff, but I don't allow any staff on any one of our programs to go and deliver our sports programs to the children that we work with, these 500,000 children. It's run through a network of 10,000 young people who are from the communities that the children and the young adults come from. Because I realized that it's no good taking children out, and it's no good parachuting people in who are teachers or who are external to that child's word. Let's make heroes of young people in that community. Let Deepika look up to Geeta and say, if she's done it, I can do it. So we have this incredible network of 10,000 people. Listen to this. They give 9 hours a week free to Magic Bus for 3 years, under contract. And why? It's not because we give them mobile phones and shoes. That's a nice thing to have, and they're proud. But they are now somebody. They're leaders in their community, and most importantly, they now have the power to help young people move from poverty. And this is, people ask me in 20 years, what have you learned the most? I've learned the most is that the poor don't want to be poor. Actually, it's such a simple thing to say. And if you can empower them, and such a horrible word, but if you can empower them not to be poor, they'll take that opportunity. And this word opportunity is the only word that differentiates them from us. And the third lesson, at the end of that also, you can imagine that bus ride on Sunday night, dropping off children back into the environment that they came from, the hell that they lived in and they live in, was also quite heartbreaking for everyone on that bus. You can imagine that. I've seen people breaking down in tears because they've seen these young lives go away for the weekend, get on a bus, experience heaven, and go back to where they are. And so we realized that wasn't the way to deal with children as well. And we had to create a contiguous journey of Magic Bus. And so when we take children on now, and we'll speak about this in a moment, When we take children on now, it's about the journey they start at the age of 12, and they don't leave the bus until they're 18 with a job. It's a commitment we make over a long period of time with every child. And the third piece I want to talk to you about these rugby boys is the importance of play and how we can use that in our schools. And we work with some of the schools I know in this environment here. We have a big campus in Kharjit. It's a 20-acre campus, and we have the most incredible development center for children where we apply a lot of our science to middle-class children. But play is exceptional. If you could close your eyes for a minute and imagine throwing a ball up in the poorest village in India, every child will gravitate to that ball. Muslim, Hindu, boy, girl, doesn't matter, because children love to play. And what we've done very well at Magic Bus is to capture that opportunity. We don't play football, cricket. We're not a sports organization. We're an organization that capture the moment of using play, experiential learning, activity-based learning, and we use mentors that change the behavior of how communities operate in India. And we do that in 5,000 communities across the country. What's lovely about this picture, before I move on, is that in this these are boys, I hate using the word street boys, but they were street-dwelling boys who, for whatever reason, found themselves on that street. 10 of those young people today are in managerial positions in Magic Bus. And it just shows this is the difference between this ovarian lottery of life that separates them from us. And this is really what started to fascinate me about how do we solve this education problem to livelihood. This is a very quick snapshot. This is a little bit old now, but what's interesting about Magic Bus as well is that, I guess, apart from the scale, the size we've managed to move to, this is actually a slightly older slide, but we've actually started creating a multinational Indian organization. I think because of the challenges we have, 400-500 million young people at school-going age, we're very good at this in India, actually. And I talk a lot overseas, I meet lots of people in the education space, and the solutions that you have and you're creating in India are invariably much more superior than's being created overseas. And so what we decided to do is to taste that. And so we've actually started multinationalizing our organization. We've just launched in 3 countries. We're about to launch in another 3. But we'll probably be one of India's only, and although I'm foreign, I see ourselves as an Indian non-profit, we'll be an Indian multinational non-profit. And I'm very pleased that we're doing that because I think what we have here is exceptional. Right, I'm going to give you a bit of a snapshot now on it's a 3-minute animation, which I haven't done for a while. So could you just pause it for have I got pause?
She and her parents are introduced to her new mentor
pause it for me?
And the parents group. Seema has no...
Could you pause it for me and turn the volume down? I'll talk through it. Could you turn the volume down on it? Volume nahi. Oh. So just before I show you this video, I guess, because of time, I'm probably going to run out of time quite soon, but the 2 things that I believe we should focus on in schools and in out-of-school programs like Magic Buses are this whole piece around building ecosystems around what we do. You can't solve a lot of the problems, even in the better environments that you guys work with, without good partnerships. What I've learned with Magic Bus is the larger we become, the more impotent we become to solve the bigger problem. So creating collaborative networks, collective impact is absolutely critical. And I say that whether that's in a classroom space, because in a classroom we sometimes work with 3 or 4 different partners, because in a classroom you need teacher training, headmaster training. You need grade technology so that you can ensure that obviously they're getting good quality of education. You need remedial. 1/3 of our children in India have the need for remedial education. There's not one single solution that will solve the problem we've got. And that's just a classroom space. And secondly, It's about holding a child's hand, and I know that's what many of you will do well, but we don't do it that well in the non-profit space. Saying, I'm going to look after you, I'm going to make sure from this age to this age, we stay by your side, shoulder to shoulder, and we get the job done. We move you out of poverty. And that's what I think Magic Bus has been very good at. In this 3-minute video, if you just notice, I'll talk you through a story about one of the 400 and something thousand children we have in Magic Bus. This is what every child gets through. We call her Seema. But also look at the blue on this. Whenever you see blue, it's when we've brought different people in to solve the problem that's bigger than ours. So can you play it without volume? So this is Seema. So at the age of 12, she's out of school. She decides she wants to re-enroll in school. But luckily, in her village, there is a Magic Bus program, and we introduce her to her mentor. She's known her mentor since the age of 4. The mentor lives in her village. She joins the Magic Bus program, and the first thing she finds out about is the importance of going to school, her right to education. And we do all that through fun and games and play. But she can't stay on our program unless she re-enrolls in school. So we bring in a remedial partner, a bridging partner, to help her with the academics to get re-enrolled, and we re-enroll her back into her school. For the next 10 years, we work with partnerships to ensure that she gets a full school uniform so she can go to school. Sadly, her teacher stops coming to school, so we work with the school management committee to make sure a new teacher comes into the school. We then bring in some of our partnerships to help build the quality of education in her school. At the age of 14, we teach her about critical things in hygiene and health, the importance of some simple things like washing your hands. She's 47% less likely to get diarrhea, and she can now go to school. We work with the local punch out in school management committee to put a new water pump into her village. As a teenager, she's loving school, but she has to leave school. Because in India, 47% of secondary schools don't have a girls' toilet. So we have to bring in a partner that builds a girls' toilet in her school. She, like 97% now of all adolescent girls in Magic Bus, 98% will stay in school right through to 12. That's compared to 43% nationally. We teach her about anemia. 50% of Indian girls have anemia. We bring in partners to have health camps for her every 6 months. She's given free anemia tablets, just a few rupees. We help her and her family get a ration card. At the age of 16, she's feeling very confident about her body. She's starting to dream about getting older. She has beaten the odds. Actually, it's now 35% of all girls in India, of all unions last year in India were child marriages. Not a single girl on a Magic Bus program got married last year under the age of 18. She finishes secondary school, and she dreams about going on to her career. She joins our Livelihood Employability Center. She meets a counselor for one-on-one personal development programming. She learns about the job she wants to do, which is in the legal profession, but she hasn't got the money, so that pressure to get married launches on her again. We work with a scholarship partner who provides her with the finance that she needs to finish her education. 71% of our graduates are now going into university. 85% of young people that finish the Magic Bus program get placed in an organized sector job. So Seema goes on, she becomes a legal secretary, but during that path from childhood to livelihood, so many things have to happen at the right time with so many different partners, and it's critical that we recognize that the right interventions have to come at the right time in order for Seema to move out of poverty. Sorry, can I just change it to the next slide? So we did this really interesting piece of work with Bain. Bain provide Magic Bus with a lot of free consulting services. We asked them to do us a project 3 years ago. We said, what we want you to do is tell us how do we, in the most effective manner, move a child out of poverty. And this is really interesting for everyone in this room because they did an enormous in-depth analysis. They talked to educationists, development workers, big organizations like the UN organizations, the Education Ministry. And they said this basically comes down to three things that are non-negotiable in every young person's life. And that is that they have to finish school with age-appropriate grades. So the quality of education has to be there. Second, and the highest indicator of someone's ability to move out of poverty is their agents, and to be successful, I should say, is their personal agency. And this is an area that obviously that I feel this is a great conversation to have over the course of the day. And these are life skills. These are efficacy, self-esteem, critical thinking skills, communication skills. And they are invariably the differentiator that's going to ensure that a young person can be successful. And the third piece was ensuring that they have financial security once they finish the education they've got. Again, a deep thought. The ILO, I don't know if any of you guys work with the 4 basic ILO skills. Sorry, I'm going to run out of time, so I'm just going to put these up. So these are, essentially we've made them 5, but essentially there's no debate about these skills. Okay, so we haven't invented them at Magic Bus. These are people who sit and think about and talk to work environment and say, what's the deficit? What are you missing? And help us build those skills. So they've asked employment partners, they've asked educationists to build these skills and inculcate them into the education system. Now what Magic Bus have done very successfully is to put that into experiential learning. So if you see any one of those skills, there's activities and games that are delivered by role models, mentors in schools and in communities that deliver that fairly complex framework of life skills. But the premise is if you don't have those skills, whatever you do in your grades, you won't be successful. It'll be very hard for you. So I guess today I would urge each and every one of you to look at these, learn more about them if you haven't already got them in your education system, and start making, obviously, time for them. I've got literally 30 seconds, so I won't speak about this anymore. But just to say that, so just as a final slide, final conversation. So what we've understood at Magic Bus is if you need to have those 3 things in a child's life, this is what we therefore should do. So what we focused on very much is, and many of you will know us for this, is using sport-based learning for life skills, which you see here. We then work with partners. I don't know if we work with any partners in this room, but we bring you into the classroom. We're not good at classroom learning, but we know it's essential to build the quality of education. So we work with a lot of technology, a lot of teacher training organizations to bring that expertise now into over 1,000 schools that we work in across the country. And finally, we provide these amazing livelihood centers. We have now nearly 50 centers. This year we'll be placing 15,000 young people in work. Next year we'll be placing 30,000 young people in organized sector work. So we've created, I think, a system and a process which is it's long and complex, but I always say to people, why wouldn't it be? We're dealing with children. Forget this premise that it's so linear in education that I can create numeracy or literacy skills and the job is done. It's not like that, as you all know in this room. I'd like to, Deep, can you stand up? So Deep is my colleague. He's the really smart guy you should talk to at the end if you want to find out more about Magic Bus, because he actually helps create the programming. At the moment we're going through this amazing process of digitalizing all our curricula. Our programs have got handsets, so we're bringing partner organization in, so there's technology companies here that want to talk to us about a platform, so we have enormous access, and we're trying to understand how we leverage that distribution to the outreach we understand is probably anywhere between 4 and 6 million young people that we can talk to on a daily basis. So thank you very much, Ravi, for having me. I've really enjoyed speaking to you, and I'll be around certainly till lunchtime. So thank you very much, everyone.
Matthew, just wait for a minute. We would require you on the stage. Firstly, thank you so much for taking us through the journey of Magic Bus, and also giving us some insights about how you are playing an important part in terms of learning and the lives of these youngsters. And I'm sure there are some burning questions in the audience. So if there are any questions, the floor is open. Is there any question? All right. It seems you are a great teacher, that they are all happy with your presentation. I'll request Mr. Santalani to please come on stage and felicitate Matthew.